Hello everyone, this is Painting of the Week. Thank you for joining me. Don't always make that many videos during the summer, but we're going to try to pick up some momentum here. I've got some architecture videos planned for the upcoming weeks. But this week we are celebrating Rembrandt van Rijn's birthday, which many of you got to see the little doodle or whatever that's called on the Google homepage there. This is one of my favorite Rembrandts. This is the anatomy lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp, painted in 1632. Rembrandt was only 26 when he painted this, so he was still developing his confidence as an artist, some kind of experimenting with some different techniques. Nicolaes Tulp, the doctor, who is, of course, positioned right here, he was a prominent anatomist and a surgeon. He was well known, well respected in his community, which is that kind of upper social status is indicated, of course, by his clothing, his cloak here, and the hat. And the up-and-coming middle class would have, and in this case did, paid pretty sizable commissions to be included in a painting along with a person like Dr. Tulp. So most of these men here would have paid to have been included in this painting. Two of them were actually physicians, and I'm going to guess that these two, who actually seem to be the most interested in the lesson, are the two real physicians. And these dissections, they were done in these big lecture halls, these big kind of theaters, which the public could attend for a cost. So there were more than just these 7 guys who were in attendance at this dissection, which maybe seems to explain why a few of them are a little bit more interested in the audience than they are in the dissection itself. The actual date of this lesson was January 16, 1632, and we can pinpoint that because the Amsterdam Guild of Surgeons, of which Dr. Tulp was a member, only would do one dissection that was open to the public every year, and they would use an executed criminal. The man here who is getting dissected was named Aris Kint, and he was an armed robber who had actually just been hung earlier that day. And notice how Rembrandt has used kind of one of his signature artistic techniques here, the umbra mortis, or the shadow of death, to kind of partially obscure his face here in the shadows. We also see this large book over here in the right-hand corner, and this is probably the De Humani Corporis Fabrica, which was published by Vesalius in 1543. This was the leading anatomical text of the day, kind of like the 17th century equivalent of Gray's Anatomy. And one of the things that even, I think, Van Gogh, in a letter to his brother Theo, commented on this, and I think it's a great observation that really makes this painting kind of stand out, is the contrast that we see between the men's dark black clothing and then their kind of pale white faces. And maybe they're a little bit queasy from being so close to this body that's being dissected. But the cadaver skin is also incredibly well toned, and it wasn't uncommon for artists to actually spend times in hospitals or in morgues, sometimes painting dead bodies to get the flesh tone just correct. And the artist that comes to mind would be the French neoclassicist Theodore Géricault and his Raft of the Medusa. I'll put a link into that video. And of course that was a couple hundred years after this, but you can still see that emphasis on mastery of the skin tone of a dead body is something that's very hard to accomplish artistically, and I think Rembrandt's done a great job here. My favorite part of the painting, though, requires a bit of medical expertise, so you're going to learn some vocabulary here. The muscle on which Dr. Tulp is pulling, right here, with those the hemostat there, is the flexor digitorum superficialis. And when that muscle contracts, it flexes the proximal interphalangeal joints of the fingers. So here's what I want you to do. So each of your fingers, right, has 3 joints, except the thumb, I guess. So if you keep the first part of your fingers straight, but then sort of bend the joint so that the middle section is flexed, that's when you're bending at the proximal interphalangeal joint. And that's the muscle that does that is the flexor digitorum superficialis, on which Dr. Tulp is pulling there. So what I want you to do now is, having your hand in that position, now look at Dr. Tulp's left hand here. And you can see that his hand is in that same position with the joints of the interphalangeal, the proximal interphalangeal joints bent. So what he's doing here is he's showing these spectators what's going to happen to the cadaver's hand when he pulls on this muscle right here. And this is great because the genius here is that Rembrandt is actually showing us 2 distinct moments in time simultaneously. So here's what he does. Whoops, get rid of this. Okay. So what he's doing is here's kind of step one. He's pulling on the muscle, right? But notice that the fingers here are remaining unflexed, which might seem a little bit confusing. But and I think here's maybe the key to the riddle of sorts here is these two men in the front. Like I said, the two people who I think are doctors. Notice that this guy here on the left is staring at Rembrandt's right hand, pulling on the muscle. The other guy, the guy on the left, is staring at Rembrandt's left hand, right, flexed at the proximal interphalangeal joints. So what's going on here is we're seeing two different things happening one after another. So guy number one is seeing Dr. Tulp pull on the flexor digitorum superficialis, and then number two here is showing us what's going to happen next by looking at Dr. Tulp's hand, which is demonstrating the flexion of the interphalangeal joints, which is soon to then occur third, and we don't actually see this here, but what we can anticipate would happen next is that the cadaver's fingers are going to bend by pulling on this muscle. So it's a very kind of interesting way to represent time in a painting. And of course that's something that is always a challenge in art, is how do we show how things change over time on something static like a canvas, and I think Rembrandt has done a fantastic job here. Be sure to check in the next few weeks. We're going to start making, I think, videos every other week here. I've got some interesting architecture videos. This has been Painting of the Week. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week, everybody.